Hey guys, welcome to the stream again. Today I will give an overview how to actually mod a settlement. You've already seen a lot of tutorials about it, about me placing buildings inside uh, the settlement, but I will give a basic overview with the empty template to to make it a nice tutorial for anyone who wants to actually edit settlements in this game. So the first thing you want to do, you go to the folder where you have your text files, etc. And then you go to the settlement plans folder. And all those text files here, it's actually called a settlement plan. Like the Berlin one, as you can see here, is a plan, and it always starts with the word plan, and you can copy paste it and do whatever changes you want to do with it. But um, I will give a quick overview of the file. So this is the most important file for a settlement because it defines the placement of different slots and buildings and the underlay and the overlay of the specific city. So we have the target rectangle. This is just the coordinates of where the capture square will be. It's always a square. It can be a rounding or something. It needs to be a square. And you can set the width and the height over here. And of course Berlin is the biggest city, so it's the same as the building I placed it as plaza, which is vanilla also, the same thing. Then you have the floor, and well, those dots and slashes are just uh, for me, so the game loads my underlay and my overlay. And the underlay um, tells the game what the different heights and well terrain is of the city. So let's have an example here. So we have 3ds Max. We go to the import export tool and let's import an underlay. So the underlay doesn't need textures because that's the overlay. But let's first go to the underlays, and all the underlays are in a CAS format. So let's import the Barbarian City. So the underlay, as you can see, um, is mostly a plane, but Barbarian City, as we know in game, has some a round square at the center where the terrain goes up. So that's how it will look in the game. So for example, when I place a random box in the middle, like this high, and I export it, then the game shows the box. But it won't have a texture because the underlay is just the terrain. So if I don't give this box a specific overlay, you will see the ground texture from all around the city at the same wrapped around this box. It's quite nice actually, because when you have a city you don't want to give all parts of the city a different overlay, and the overlay is mostly used for roads and well, the game vanilla game uses it for um, brown spots underneath trees, etc. So but when I export this box, I will show it later. Let's first delete this and let's import the Egyptian village. So in 1942, of course, the barbarian cities, I'm doing it, trying to finish the Italian and French cities. Now because I finished Berlin, I have time to continue with that, but the Egyptian culture is referenced as Japanese in my game files, and I can show you that over here in the cultures files. the Egyptian one is for the Japanese. So all different strat map models are defined here. You will need that at the latest part when adding and creating a settlement. You want to have your settlement a nice view on the strat map, but that's not this tutorial. Let's go to the settlement plan. This file is in your data folder, and you can just copy it from vanilla and edit it or create some new changes. It's a pretty big file, and it contains a lot of information and nice handy things. As the first thing you will notice here is a list with all different buildings, and those names, these names are from buildings you added in the game under the Desker model, Desker building battle folder. I'll go to that later, but it's a primary building list. So that means that if you have a slot with, for example, the group factory in it, when you have artillery in the game and you fire at the group factory, the factory will be destroyed or will get damaged. And on the strat map, when you finish the battle, then the building will be destroyed, and that's purely the primary buildings over here. So that's how they are defined. Do we have some climate groups? I use it for trees, but this is an important one. Then you have ambient groups, and the vanilla game uses it for different buildings. And in my previous stream you watched me adding some tenements in Berlin, which I predefined here, and I'll create a new one later when I actually go into modding. So my plan today is I will create an empty settlement. I will then create one building. I will place it in a slot. Maybe I can copy it 4 times in a specific slot. And I would then place the slot in the city. So then you might know how to create slots, and they are quite useful. And well, this is just the group, and you can call a group different places. You can call this group right in the plan of the city. As you can see here, I have here a list ambient buildings. So this is the group with all different buildings at positions. So the group is actually kind of a slot, but it's a group buildings together. So that's why Berlin looks, all houses there looks the same position, but only turned and other positions, because they are in group. Okay, and then we have the other groups, some small parks. You can use the groups sections for ambient buildings, and then we can go to the slots. So we have a group again. So a slot is actually useful because it can have a own underlay and overlay. And one good example, let's import. You can export it under slot underlays and overlays. For example, the artillery ground, the biggest one, this one. Yeah, as you can see, the texture is quite messed up, but it doesn't matter. The game doesn't load this texture in the game. So the overlay tells exactly what textures you are using. The What I do with the overlays and underlays, I always just create the overlay. I then merge everything together and export it as underlay. Because when you have the overlay and the underlay aligned, you can actually have a perfect synced texture. Because if you place the overlay at increased Z angle, like height, then you will have a transparent overlay and the game might be messed. So that's what you have probably with roads. I have it with roads in Berlin. I have a little height difference so you can actually notice it when you look close. For example, when I go to slot overlays now, so it's this one. Yes, this one. So you can see I ignored one big plane, the underlay, because I only wanted this specific areas to paint. Like this, these are holes. Can I have the texture please? Yes. It's always looking in the wrong folder. There we go. So this is explosion ground, and with the alpha texture, so you will see not see it from green grass to dirt immediately, but you will see kind of fading. So that's nice with buildings. You can have an alpha texture. I will show it in game. Quick side note is it? It's not dirt. Explosion grounds. Not soil. Ah, there you go. So we have the dirt picture over here, and when we apply the alpha channel, you can see it goes from white to black, which means the sides, the picture is transparent. So that's able with buildings. You can have transparent buildings. I'm not sure if it works with I mean, this works with overlays. I'm not sure if it works with buildings itself. I tested before, but I only found the black didn't work, so you couldn't have transparency. But I know it's working for the overlay. So we have a square over here, and this is the bottom, and the border is another texture. And when we have the underlay, you always need to merge the underlay with the right dimensions. What I mean is when you have a settlement and you have the underlay ready, you want a building with its own underlay, I will show it later. Then you need to cut the space out from your settlement underlay, because otherwise you have a glitch where you have two underlays at the same position. So you have to divide those, and I could show it in my German youth city underlay. So you see those gaps. So the gap is actually a slot, so it always fills the gap. But when you don't make a gap in your settlement underlay, you will have a matchup glitch. Alright. So the first thing we want to do, we want to go to the settlement plan and we search for the Egyptian slots. So we all go down all the way until we come to some plans over here. So we can ignore the forts, and here we go with camps. And here we have the plan sets. So if you have a default set, this is also defined in your Desker strat for each settlement. It just loads the default plan levels. As you can see, I have a secret set as well, which loads for every culture this plan level with the dragon teeth wall. You can create a lot of sets yourself, but I thought I had, yes, I have African set as well. So every African settlements will have this set. And then you have the local any, and default you have African plan levels. So the plan levels are defined above it. And for now we have the Egyptian plan levels. And here we have defined for the village, will have the Egyptian village, town, large town, city, etc. So instead of this, we will want another city. Well, this is defined above here. So here we have all the plans. So for the Germans, as you can see, I have different new generated plans. So now I want for the Egyptian, let's go with, let's do the town. So if we go to the plans, yes, instead of Egyptian town, this one, we copy it, rename it Japanese 1942 Japanese town. And we paste it. So now the game will load this new file when you have a Japanese town. So we open it, and it has default underlay and overlay. We will change that later. First we want to get rid, not the walls, we can just use it and change it later. We want to get rid of all the slots, so we delete the slots. The collision, we want to disable that. The collision is actually a non-existent building with the standard building collisions all over the settlements. So AI and soldiers cannot walk at that positions, which is very nice. That's one of the latest thing you want to do, because you want to first get some pathfinding done in the street plans, and then you can add some collisions with places where the AI is not allowed to go. For example, in my Berlin map I had large river. Well, of course soldiers don't need to go there. So then you have all the ambient buildings, and I don't want an Egyptian village, I want a new one. So I delete it, and I also delete all the trees, because one thing I did in Berlin, you are not missing trees. Why? Because I added the trees in the building slots. So every building slot, ambient building slots, has its own trees. So your settlement got filled anyway with trees, which is better than just popping one tree every place in your city. You can do it, of course, like Vanilla does, but I like it my way. Alright, so we now should have an empty settlement. So let's load the game. I'm not sure if you even have a Japanese town from the start, but let's check it out. So now we should have an empty settlement with only walls and the gates. Because you notice there are also 4 road joiners, and those have underlays and overlays from itself. And those define where the road from the cities around joins the city. And I have drawing in one of my cities. So it's quite hard. So we join Japanese Empire. I haven't played this in a while. Not even sure if they have towns from the start, but background script enabled. City, capital, large town, town. Ah, we have town here. So Pyongyang is a town and only has a setback wall, which is good. So whenever you build buildings now, you won't see them because I disabled all the slots. So let's view this. And I see a lot of buildings. Alright. That's not... Japanese town. You can just use the texture from an overlay. Like, because you saw my grass texture on it, the game won't load it. So it doesn't... it needs to be a texture, of course, otherwise you can't export it, so... but it doesn't matter what texture. So what have I done wrong? Egyptian town. Japanese town. Interesting. Japanese town. So either this game is dumb or I am forgetting something crucial. But let me check. Culture Egyptian. What the fuck? Well, this should work. It should load this and ignore everything else. So this is quite interesting. And now added the same plan for the cities and large cities, so you should see an empty settlement now. It might be because the settlement is spawned as Chinese, as Eastern, and not as Egyptian on the strat map. So that might be the reason. That's the faction creator line in the Deskerstat file. Well, this looks very empty. Alright, so it works. So we have an empty settlement over here with only an underlay and the overlay. And that ground .dja tells where the grass, the vegetation ends and stops, where you want it in the city. Well, I disabled it everywhere in my cities, but if you enabled it, your vegetation will be everywhere, even in the streets. Alright, so we have an empty settlement and we want to change the underlay and the overlay. As you can see, the underlay is just the same green as everywhere around, and the overlay is probably this road and those brown dots where the trees were. Yeah, well, that's it. So to create the underlay and the overlay, I will import the underlay, and the underlay is Eastern Town underlay. Alright, so let's change that. There we go. So the underlay is always a plane with an outline, and the outline is where you can spawn the troops, and the underlay has some gaps, as you can see, and this is always a plane with the size 64 with 64. So why is it 64 by 64? This gap is the road joiner. What that means, road joiner is the road you see joining the town. So the gates will be here and the walls all around, and it's always need to be 64 by 64. And you place this in your city. So for example, this 64 by 64, and we have Japanese town here, and the walls we can ignore, and here we have the road joiners. So we have a gateway slot into flat town, which means the underlay is just at position 0, so it's flat. The Romans have some curved roads, so that's use gateway slot into Roman town. But as you can see here, if we set the wireframe, it's all at the Z axis, so you can just use flat. And well, then important thing is the negative change everything. So the first one is x coordinate 0. So we set it to 0. The second is 2, 5, 6. But we need to make it negative. It's now 8, 0. So this slot is exactly at the same place as it should be. So you define it here. And you can also rotate it, so you always rotate objects with the Z-axis 90. You don't see now anything now, but that's how the road joiners work. And road joiners are important, and you need to be sure you have gaps, because otherwise I can show it to you when you don't have gaps. So we have the underlay, we attach the previous created plane, and if we export the underlay now as Japanese town underlay we go. So instead of the eastern one, let's open Berlin for the prefix. Yes. Alright, so we now should have a glitch over here. So because we have this underlay here with this gap filled and the road joiner itself also has an underlay and overlay, so it will be glitched, just to try out. And we load the overlay. The overlay is, let's check it, Eastern Town overlay. Eastern Town overlay. So there you go. You see, this settlement has an overlay with sand. So whenever you have an overlay with sand, your city will be sand. I don't want that. Delete. It doesn't matter. And we can delete all those trees as well. But we need to export something, otherwise the overlay won't work. Let's first delete the scene roots. Then we delete all but one trees sections. We set this at 0, 0. Doesn't matter. Oh, let's make it fixed coordinates. And to make it tiny as hell. Oh. So we won't see it. Otherwise it won't help. When you have other objects you can of course delete it, but this is just because otherwise I can't export it. So we export it as 1942 Japanese town overlay. There we go. We place that in the overlay section here. With the prefix, otherwise you can't find it. Settlements plus overlays. There we go. Then we have this ground Eastern Town over here, and this is a TJA. Let's find that one. Ground types. Grounds Eastern Town. So it looks like this. And you can just ignore it. Every white space, I believe, is the rest just vegetation. And the other things, I believe, this is no vegetation. But as you can see in my Berlin, German youth city grounds, I turned it all blue. So let's do the same. Blue means no vegetation. No, not the ground Eastern Town. You have a good point, and I will show you what happens when you delete the road joiners. So I have this. It needs to be a TJA file, by the way. You can't have a DDS format for this, otherwise the game will load. There we go. We can change it to whenever we want. Let's make it 500. This just means that this is the size of the picture you have. So at all that area you won't have vegetation now. So let's disable road joiners. to shell. So one of the road joiners, we filled the gap in the cities, in the town's underlay, and we then deleted all road joiners. So we should have 3 gaps and 1 normal piece. You mean the coordinates behind the TTI files? Yes. I don't know. I think it's the size of the points where the picture starts. Yeah, you're a few minutes behind. So I don't know really, but as you can see now on my screen, there's no grass, no vegetation. So there's gap 1. So this is the 64 by 64 road joiner. It's look quite silly, as you can see. It's just a gap, and they can walk in here, but you won't see any nice things from that. But the road joiner, when, for example, in the distance here there's another settlement and you build a road connection, then there will be a road automatically built and it will come into the city somewhere. And well, at this point there's no road or city built, but from this side there isn't one as well. But this gap we merged with the underlay. So you won't see a gap here, but there's no road either. But here you can see a good example. So the this road is generated by the game itself, but it ends here and it needs another object to merge it into settlement. And that's the road joiner. And it has an underlay and overlay, because you can see here there's some height difference in the roads, so it can't be a flat plane. So this road joiner is needed for the game to fix, because when the road was at this place, when you have filled the gap, then the road will just end here and your road in the city will start here. So this is needed from this point to the gates, which should be over here when we have walls. Can we build walls? I don't think this town can have the walls, the dragon teeth walls, because that's why there are no walls showing up. Oh, there are no walls here. So let's build the walls. Osaka. Oh, let's build the brick walls. Save it. Japan. There we go. So now we sort of have the brick wall with the new gate, by the way, and then you can clearly see that there's some piece missing. Yes, there we have it. So this road piece is missing. So it's needed to have the road joiners 64 pixels off the gates, and the gates in the settlement plan, as you can see here, one is at 0 to 124. If you count 46 with it, we have 88. No, that's not. Okay, interesting. No, it's 32, of course. Yeah, because it's half of it. But you need the collisions. Let's import the underlay. Japanese town. And let's this delete somewhere here. So there we go, we have the gap again. So we have the plane, overlay and underlay. And you can use old ones yourself, or you can create a new one. But I hardly create a new one because the game likes to mess with it a bit. For Berlin I created a new one which has a whole wall system around, it's very big, and I will use it for Paris as well, and London, and well, other big cities. But for other things I just use standard German youth, Roman youth city templates. But I can make it empty so you won't actually notice anything from it. But you can create one yourself. And to do it, I will show you. We create a new plane. Well, let's make it as small as possible. There we go. It's just a square, and we make it yeah, 520 by 520. Which point is this? 288, 32. 288 times 2. Alright. 76. So we have a big square now. Of course we export this as editable mesh and make it underlay. Then we give it some random texture, doesn't care what. Apply. And we copy it, clone, and call this one the outline. The outline should have the same size as the underlay, but the inside you can change the underlay and not the outline. I deleted the wrong one. This one. So let's hide the outline. And now we can remove the gaps. So let's create 4 planes, all the lengths 64 by 64. Make the mesh. So the first one, gateway slots into flat town, is at 0 to minus 265, because it's 256 here, so it needs to be minus 256 in Redirect Max. So the second one, we call it remove 1. We clone it, remove 2, that's fine. It's minus 256 and just 0. This is the left entrance. Then we have another clone, removes 3, and that's 0, so this is probably 256, the north side. There we go. And then we have remove 4, which is the eastern side. So we have 4 pieces of 64 by 64. We merge it together. And this is one easy tool to remove sections from your underlay. So you make sure your view is like this. Then you select all polygons. You use the extrude button and you increase the heights. Then you go to front view and you make sure the new box you generated is not with the bottom or top at 0 position. So then we have the underlay. Then we use a method in Reader's Max. So we go to compound objects. We click on Boolean. We pick operand B and then we select the 4 boxes. We do union as operations. So it operates them in the objects. Then we convert it to editable mesh. We instantly click on polygons and we should have the box selected again and we delete it. So now you think nothing changed. Well, actually there is. Because as you can see, when we select the vertex, you can see 4 new vertices over here. And we can delete from a plane which was only 4 vertices. So now we have the underlay and the outline. We can export this as underlay. Japanese town. There we go. And well, let's just create some random overlay. So go to standard primitives. Let's make let's add the plane at the center. The size of this, no, smaller. Let's make it 50 times 50. There we go, at the z-axis. Let's give this some random texture. This tree one, no, it needs to be something of my folder. So we give it, the overlay needs to be in the textures folder. Let's give it some random, let's give it a Turkish flag. Well, that's nice. No, don't give it Turkish. We are on Japan. So we add the Japanese flag. Oh, that's nice. We call this, we export it as a flag. Set it under the scene root. Delete this. But first we save it as 1942 Japanese town overlay. I don't need to save the underlay yet, but when you have like rivers crossing to the town, you can create the underlay to easily load the DisMax file and export it. But now we have the underlay and the outline. We don't need that. There we go. And the flag. So let's make sure the flag is the flag only. There we go. convert it, make it at 0.0, so it's at the center. We delete the underlay because otherwise you will have a very big overlay of the flag of Japan. So the overlay is just this little plane over here. And we export this as overlays, Japanese town overlay. Alright, but one thing that is different is the walls. Because we have a bigger settlement now, we need to change the border. And we have walls in this city, so we have this section over here. And I have a nice tool for the walls. So let's open it in the new Discover. It's not here. It's this one. Let's open it. Let's zoom out and import settlement plan file. Open the Japanese town. It's not the valid floating point. Well, whatever. I don't care. But this tool is very handy. So the gate's already here. There was some random error, but doesn't matter. We can create the walls now. We can delete this and this. This is the only thing that's important for me. So we will make a square easy wall. So we have a gate here, and the walls are actually quite irritating to mod as well. And that's why this tool is very handy, because you have some straight sections, some corner sections over here, a tower, some diagonal link, and some external corners and external towers, etc. It's, yeah. So every wall, so this piece here is a straight wall, it needs a straight link with another straight piece. And the black line tells what the walls are facing, so it's facing outside now. So we create another one here, and we double click it until the swart black line is outside, and once again here and here. Alright, so now we can create either a straight one or a tower straight. You can use both. So for this side, let's create a tower here and here. And from this side, we will just do straight. And here we'll use straight, and here as well. And as you can see, I already forgot some straight links, so the game would crash when I forgot to add these. This tool helped me out a lot. Alright, so on the north side I don't want towers at the corner, because I have towers here already. So we first create a straight, and then we have external corner link. And you use external corner for the outsides. And you use internal corner link when you have wall pieces like this. So people walk there, that side. So delete this one. And at this side I want a corner link, external corner link as well. There we go. a wall and a wall again. And at this side I want a tower, external tower. There we go. Oh, let's change this. Let's make it symmetrical. Yes, and external corner link here. Alright, and now I have completed this wall setup. We export the walls and we get some screen with the coordinates of every little piece. We copy that into the Japanese town. We place it. No, interesting. Delete this one. And we save it. So now we should have another border and another overlay and another underlay in the settlement. So let's, oh, the game's already opened, so that's nice. We need to close it. And I'm playing the mod in window mode, so I can swap easily. But when you have full screen mode for Rome Total War, you can actually Alt tab and Alt tab back into the game, and it will load textures of the overlay again, so you don't need to close the game then. But when you use window mode, you need to close the game and reopen it. So I hope everything works nicely. So I should have a bigger settlement now with the road joiners at a good place, an underlay at the overlay of the flag. There we go. That's nice, guys. That's nice. So we have a perfectly square settlement, as you can see. We have this road joiner over here, which is exactly correct, like the vanilla version. And well, this is a square settlement with the good... Let's check the towers. There's no one. And there's a tower. There's no tower, and there's a tower. Yeah, that's good. And of course the overlay. So, for example, if you want to change the overlay, you can Alt tab when you have full screen. Let me check transparency. So I'm not sure if it works like I told before, so I need to go to the buildings folder. Yeah, let's just use the flag. That's nice. Alright. We need to make it this size, otherwise the game will crash. And we create the channel, the alpha channel. And we open recently explosion grounds. And we use this alpha. There we go. So we should have some kind of circular image here. Test circle. And it needs to be a DDS file. You can save it directly using these methods. So instead of this texture we need the new texture, circle, circle, it was circle, test circle, alright, whatever. We need to unwrap the unwrap again to make it fully visible. There we go. export the overlay. German, no, Japanese town overlay. Yes. So we should see it like I pretend to be seeing it. It should be nice now. Continue campaign. Hi Mr. Regan, welcome to the stream. I'm showing how to create an empty settlement with borders and underlay and overlay and fill a slot with buildings. So this is just a placeholder of the Japanese town. I will fill it with Japanese buildings later. So as you can see, the alpha is kind of working. So you have the underlay, which is just a plane, and the overlay is fading out, just like the explosion ground. So you should be able to work with alpha channels. That's nice. And I like the new brick wall gates as well, because tanks can now ram it. And because tanks are elephants now. Yeah, that's nice. But there's a bug somehow. And I need more spaces. I'm always... Now I can free space in the desk command file, but I need space in the model battle file now. Yeah. And you can see the sprites working of the soldiers. Alright, so now we have an empty settlement. And we want, for example... let's... We have the underlay over here. And I don't care about the flag anymore, so we delete it. We make it very small, I believe. Yes. There we go. So I use the underlay as a placeholder. And why? Because you can see where you can place the buildings in the slots. Otherwise buildings will be out of the city, don't want that. So I make it C minus 0.2. So any slots we make now will be visible. So when I draw a plane, you should be seeing it. Why is it not showing? Oh, negative. Fine. Negative. Yes. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is you want to add a new building. For otherwise you can't fill any slots. So we save this as Japanese town overlay. There we go. And now I need to find a building, a Japanese building, and I'm not sure if I have any, so let me check in my special World of Tanks tool. Because in the old days there were Japanese towns. And well, they are removed, so let me check. So I have a folder, buildings 1942. Japanese, haha. A small house or a temple complex, just for roof. Interesting. And the other one, I can't find the texture folder. No, let's go into the folder. and give it the texture. There we have it. Lots 1. Place texture. Can't find, well, whatever. Alright. The temple complex. Yeah, stop whining about textures. Export this as objects. Yeah, it's kind of bug programmed it. Well, that's nice. Let's add texture already. Interesting, I need to close the process because it's bugged. Let's open it. Temple complex merged. Lots 1. There we have it. Exports to... Ah, not again, please. I'm sorry. This is taking too long. Exports. Selection only. Alright. We import it. As buildings. Japanese. There we go. One building. Oh, there's only, only one object, so I could use another program as well. But it looks quite Japanese, so that's what we meant to do. Let's give it a nice texture. So we go to the buildings folder and we call it Japan Temple Details. Japan Temple Details. There we go. Oh, it's looking nice indeed. Alright, so we have this temple, but we don't know what size it is and we doesn't have any reference points, so we import an old building. Let's import a German house, a city house 4. So we have the city house and this is the temple. Well, it should of course be as big as the house. So we need to be sure the stairs are reachable for the view. We give it its old texture back. So we can now export this building. So we export the building just in the models building folder as 1942 Japanese temple 1 high. I'm not sure how big this model is, but we will see. Oh, it's already completed, that's nice. We then use the Pro Optimizer, keep textures, protect borders, and keep UV boundaries. Oh, it's not that big model. And let's make it 70%. Japanese temple med, which means medium. And then we make a low as well. It's already done. And the low version for low-end computers, yeah, let's do 40%. Japanese temple 1 low. So that's step 1. I have now 3 high, medium and low entries. So the next thing, I will go to, let's close, no, let's keep it open. Let's go to the Desker building battle folder. And here you can create a text file which defines where you want the buildings. For now, let's make it unbreakable. So I copy the German houses. I name it Japanese houses. Buildings for Total Warner mods. Japanese special buildings. We keep 1 as reference, and this is indestructible, so that's nice. Delete. Right. And we call it Japanese temple 1. Temple. Or dragon temple, whatever. You need to make sure it's in the line, so let's check it. Localize name temple. The text folder in the building battle file, and you search for temple. It's not there, so let's create it. Temple. Temple. Alright, so you now will see temple when you hover over it. That's good enough. And it searches for this item. And the physical info tells the collision. And we'll do that in a second, but first let's create the item. So once again, we go to Deskar items, folder below it. We copy the German houses and we name it Japanese houses. Because we have 3 lots, high, medium and low, we will use this template. And the item reference here is the name of it, so the type is Japanese Temple 1, and with the distance 400 we will have the building Japanese. A lot of German houses here. Japanese Temple 1. So the size is not that big, so it doesn't matter, but it's good to have different lots for the distances. So that's done. Next thing you don't need to forget is you open Deskar Building Battle first. You scroll down to the bottom where you see a list of includes, and you then type the new text file you created. So I have Japanese houses text and check Japanese houses. And you do the same for Deskar items. You open Deskar items. You see a lot of I have every single item here. The game needs them, otherwise to crash. And includes. So you include the Japanese houses. Then you can delete the database file of the Deskar items. It will generate itself, as you can see soon. So the last thing we need to do, we open at British Max again. And well, now we have a low polygon house. It's not that big. So you can convert it to mesh. Call it collision 3D, not 3DS, 3D. You can then create a plane, drag it around the building, be sure it's at C0 and call it collision. So the collision means people cannot walk at that space. Otherwise people will just walk through your building. Now they need to move around it. Collision 3D means when you move the camera towards it, it will hover over it, and it is also needed for destroyed shells, etc., for artillery shells and launchers where it should hit. So we export this as models building info, and we call this Japanese. Well, how did we call it in the... yeah, the Deskar items folder, there's that Japanese houses. So there's your lot settings. So we export it as info. We copy the line so we won't fuck it up. Then we go into the Deskar building battle file again, and we can change the physical info to the new export you made, and it is also a CAS file. But it won't work if you have any different than collision or collision 3D, so you need to rename the objects. Otherwise it won't work. So that's that. So now we have a new building. The game hasn't generated yet, but it won't until we actually call the game to place the building. So we need to go into our settlement plan. We first copy the Desker building battle line of the building, which is the same as my item name in this case, but the game will search for the Desker building battle file. We go to the Japanese town and I will place it in the ambience. So we have this building at 0, 0, 0. So at the center of our map we will have this building, and now we can run the game. It will first generate the new items file database. Let's check if it's generated. There we go, it's generated. So we should now see a new building on the map. It's closed, sometimes I have the bug. I'm not sure where that comes from. It's quite irritating now because it's since a few weeks I have this problem that the game closes without any error and it's just working, as you can see. So, not sure what the problem is there. I changed some sprites, but I hope it's only on my PC though. So I need some testers from when before I release version 2. So it's loading the game, and it takes a while now. This game is so trolly sometimes. Isn't even working. It's not responding. Why not? Close it. And again. Oh, this game. And again and again. Maybe I reached the building limit though. Could be funny. Let's remake the Desker items folder, the database file. Well, at least that is working. When I reach the limit of the buildings now it will be interesting. What's wrong? Fuck this game. Is the process running? No, it's not. Let's remove some buildings. Maybe that's it. So, Desker items. Hmm. I have some fake houses. Like this. German airport. That's good. German castle. Yeah, that one. I can delete that one. German castle and the German castle wall. What's wrong with my mouse now? It's not working. Let's search in the buildings. Castle. Of course not. Castle. Oh, it's disabled already. Modding is quite a pain sometimes. Oh, why is it crashing? Like, what the fuck? No reason to. Oh, now it's loading. There's no sense at all. I remove one building and... Alright. Continue the campaign. So all those buildings are irrelevant now. Loads on the campaign. I just want to see that one building. And I want to see the distance changing its nice beauty. Oh, there we have it. It's a building. The collision seems to be working as no soldier is walking through it. Oh, this one is walking. No, it's walking around. The camera is not entering it, so the collision 3D is working. And it's named Temple. And you stop right here. Yes, he stops. He can't walk it there. So that's nice in collision files. Yes, you see, it turned from low lots to from medium to low because you see the rails here and it's gone. Well, that's nice if you have different loads. So we have a first Japanese building here. Well, so, well, that's how you add buildings, if the game works with you. Of course, I can delete all old vanilla buildings because I don't need them anymore. But that's the building section. So now the game generated an item file of the building inside your items folder. I should now have a 1942 Japanese temple. There we go. This is an item file. And you can load that item in your overlay. And I always do it with the flag here, and then we import the item. And I always load it. I delete 3 lots. I ungrouped it and I call it Japanese temple. I now have the temple at the right size at the right location. Well, I can change the position of this temple, and I have the new coordinates, and I can just alter it. I can also rotate it along the z-axis. And there you go. You can place multiple buildings this way. So don't worry if it's in the ground. The game just doesn't load it. But that's one building. Now we're going to place it in a slot and have it multiple. How are you going to fix that? Well, the first thing is, let's set this temple position solid. So we have it as a place so we see how it turns out when another slot is it. So the x coordinate, it's negative here and the radius max, so it should be positive. Copy it. The x coordinate should be positive here. We paste it. Don't forget to change the comma into a dot, otherwise the game will crash. And it's also negative 210, so there we go. That's the I coordinates. The third one is actually the rotation. So the rotation is minus 90, and that somehow is correct when you do it this way. So it's turned 90 degrees. And the Z height is correct. We don't want to change that. So if you want to change the height of the building like this, you can do that as well. That's the latest number, but it's 0 now. So when I load the game now, you will see the temple at this location. But let's first create a slot. So let's create a plane. And let's make it this big. So 75 by 75. We call it slot 75 by 75 Japanese temple. There we go, we have a slot. It's just a plane, but whatever. Which location? So we have the gate here, so let's make the slots right at the north gate. So 0, the X location 0, the I location 144. So we then create the slots. So we just copy this line, doesn't matter what. I call it slot 75 Japanese temple. The x-axis was 0 and the y-axis was 144, but we need to make a minus. And we make sure it's turned 0. It doesn't matter if you have a square. I have a square now. It won't mess up the underlay, the overlay, but if you have a rectangle, for example, it will mess up the underlay and overlay. So you need, I mostly use squares. So that's that. I have a Japanese temple at this location. I then fill this. No, not. Let's first, yeah. Let's delete everything. But this. So let's call it underlay. So I'm now creating the underlay of the specific slots. And of course the outline should be 75 by 75 because I create the slots with that size. And it doesn't matter what size, and I want to make some kind of hill. No, slots doesn't need to be have an underlay or overlay, and I'll show that in a second. So let's create the length and the width, and width is the same, and let's add some new excuse me, some segments, so 10 by 10. So I'll have some more vertices now. This is the new underlay. I need to give it some random texture. This one. It doesn't have one, but yeah, just this one. Alright. And I want the temple to be on kind of hill. So I'm not sure how big the temple was in size, but use this. And we can increase the height of it. Oh, that's nice. Let's make it this. Ooh. No, we use soft selection tool. Go to soft selection, I use it. And when I raise it now, I have a nice hill. Remember, when you do so, you need to check if the height of the outline still is 0. It should be, otherwise you see some kind of air gap. It needs to be at 0 everywhere, otherwise it would look ugly. So, Japanese temple underlay. So we export this in the settlement plans, slot underlays, Japanese temple, slot 75 times 75 underlay. We don't need an overlay, we only need an underlay. I don't need an overlay. There's no texture for sure. Well, I'll use this one, I don't care. Oh, I exported it. Alright, so I have this here, I copy the line, I then go to Desker settlement plan, and I go to the section where the slots begin. So I search for slots, and the game has some sections here. I search then for 1942. There we go. Now total for 1942 slots. So I create a new slot with this specific name, and I say slot that, new line, open and close, default, opens and close. And you can have a floor. So this is the actually underlay and the overlay section. So if you say none, you won't have any underlay, but you can have overlay. If you only want an underlay, for example, you can just remove the later line, I believe. Let me check that. Yes. So here we have a section with only an underlay. Oh, never mind. Well, I just remove it anyway. So we have the Japanese temple. we search for an underlay section. There we go. And how did we name that file? Slot underlays. There we go. That's the underlay. I removed this line. We don't need an overlay. So we now have a slot defined and its default has only an underlay. And you can place any buildings there. So let's do that. So we have this one, underlay. Let's import an item. Let's import a temple. Japanese temple. So this temple needs to be raised now because it's in the grounds. So let's move it to this position and turn it 90 degrees. So we couple this line here and place it underneath the floor. So you need to check by floors from the position of the slots. So we have this temple, its X position is 0, its Y position is 0, that's easy. Its rotation is 90 and its height is this. Right, so we have a temple on some kind of hill. So the game sees this Japanese town overlay and it searches for this slot, which is just a 75 by 75 plane. It's not a plane, it's just the slot defined here. And it then loads its defined underlay and overlay, if it has any, and the buildings. And this position here, oh, I just messed up, right? Yeah, I did. No, I did mess up. Oh, I changed this for no reason. Alright. So this was 0, 0, and it was 90 degrees. So that's where we have the next step. I have this 75 by 75 plane underlay. I then go to the Japanese town overlay again and I have this plane, and I always just use planes with the specific size and I move it to this position. I then go to the Japanese town and I define the slot at this specific position. 0, minus 144 and no rotation. Of course, this needs to be the height. So the plan loads the slot and the slots has defined the building. I can create another temple, but well, I only have one hill at the size, so as you can see the right stack beneath it exists of different, it's also a slot and it has different buildings of the Reichstag all merged together. So I can call this slot a couple of times, for example. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just 192. Let's do it. We are here to test, right? Alright. So this side's actually 192 and the length is actually 156. So this is some random Reichstag building in the Japanese town. So we have this slot, Japanese town. Let's copy the section. So the exposition is 3. It's -3, of course. The I position is not minus this time. So let's order it a bit. And no rotation. Let's face it, the temple. So let's rotate it. Minus 180. Or just 180. Yes. I can call this hill over here. I can copy the slots. Let's place it next to it. Yeah, that's nice. So I have the slots. Now I copy this line. But instead of the X position here, I have this. Alright, so we have the Reichstag now. There's 2 Japanese temples. But we created an underlay. So if I load the game now, the underlay of the city will be glitched with the underlay of the temples. If the game doesn't crash like normal. It created some... Oh, I had some typo. This... So the game doesn't crash now, for some reason. So I hope I did everything right in one go. A lot of things will mess up sometimes. So we have no overlay for the specific slots, and we have the Reichstag with all the different buildings. There we go. So we have one Reichstag here. It hollows buildings with its own collisions. You cannot move there, idiots. And then we have the 2 temples here with the hills. And the underlay is just walkable. As you can see, you can make gaps and well, the game is not glitchy now because I'm using a hill. But for example, when you're using a river, you need to delete the specific slots from the underlay of the city itself, like I showed. Yeah, but that's how you create slots. So you can create multiple hills by just calling it. I have some random and this is the building itself. As you can see, it's outside the settlement because when you see the overlay, the walls are, yeah, the walls will loop here. Yeah, this square. So the building is indeed outside the settlement. Yeah, well, it's looking nice. At least there's no tower here with some hidden statistics. Would be nice if you have a tower which cannot be hit because there's some random building before it. So there you have it. This is oh, I will show you how to do the water. Yeah, that's one last thing. Alright, so close it. I will create an easy one though. Yeah, let's save it. This is the overlay. Let's create a river here. So the length is 52 and the width is 300 exactly. And convert it to a mesh. Select the vertices here. I use soft selection. There we go. I can make it as deep as possible. As long as the sides won't turn up. Alright. This is quite a deep river. So it was 52 by 300, right? I need to say that somewhere. Let's place it at 0. That's quite easier. So this thing needs to be connected with your underlay. But first I will do the water. So we have the river. And let's create the plane. The length X, let's make it 2, not too big. I will not be... I'm not making it very beautiful now, but we can set the overlay. It's more like a backfill now. Let's make it -2. Yeah, you can see the squares. Okay, let's make it -5. 3, 4. No, 4. Well, alright. So we call this river. So this part should be in the overlay section. We give it a texture, and I already have one. Water, dark blue. Water, yes. Alright. Let's use the view wrap. Let's scale the water a bit. Oh, that's too much. That's too low. Yeah, that's good enough for me. Oh, this is better. Alright. Yes. Good. Convert it. We have the river. And this should be under the scene root. The underlay doesn't need to be under the scene root. So yeah, the only thing that should be exported as the overlay is the river and the random flag. Um, so we delete everything. And we export this as overlay. And of course you want it to be better, your quality, but I'll just show you. Overlays, Japanese town overlay. There we go. So we have the overlay of the river, but now we need to export the underlay as well. So we delete everything. We import the underlay, which already has the borders. That's nice. And now do the same trick. We need to cut a piece out of the already known 300 at position 0, 0. Convert it to mesh. We select the polygon and we extrude it. We use the front face and make sure it's between the top and the bottom, and we unhide the underlay. Use compound objects boolean. We pick it. We then merge it together. We instantly delete it, and we can then delete parts of the river. Yeah, that's it already. Yes, that's a nice gap. So we now attach the new river to the underlay. Yeah, so that's a new underlay. The outline is still the same, it's just a flat plane. We export it as Japanese town underlay and reload the game. So we should now have some random river underlay, should be quite deep actually, and some plane which is not at position 0, as you can see here, but at some lowered position. Yeah. So there you have it, a river. But of course when you zoom in you see the bottom, so that's why I use, in Berlin I used, I didn't use transparency of the water, just the lighter color, so you can see the bottom. And well, this happens when you have the overlay shorter than the underlay, but well, it's up to you of course. But that's how you create a river in front of the Reichstag and the two nice Japanese buildings. So well, it's quite nice actually. Maybe I will use it in the Japanese town, I'm not sure. But well, that's how you create starting basic settlements with some new buildings. I hope you can use this. You can watch it. I will save it on YouTube. And yeah, well, that was it for today. I'll thank you for your attention, and I'll see you next time.